You ever wake up from a dream where you finally got everything you wanted and it felt wrong? Like your body knew before your brain did that freedom wasn't supposed to feel like this? Yeah, they felt that too. Only difference is they didn't wake up. They built factories around it. Entire nations. Entire lifetimes. And then they died still believing the lie that if they just worked a little harder, a little longer, they'd finally be free. Spoiler, they never were. And the worst part? You're living in the leftovers of their dream right now. It starts in 1776, but not the part they taught you in school. Forget the Patriots and the tea. This is about something quieter, something that slipped into the American imagination like smoke under a door. Benjamin Franklin writes it down first, almost like a confession he doesn't know he's making. Time is money. For words. That's all it took. For words, and suddenly your heartbeat has a price tag. Your Sunday morning. Your daughter's laugh. The hour you spent staring at the sky, doing absolutely nothing. All of it monetized, all of it guilt. And here's the thing that'll make your skin crawl. He meant it as advice. He thought he was helping you. Because back then, there was this idea spreading like a fever through Europe and the colonies. They called it the Protestant work ethic, but really it was just a new kind of religion. One where your worth wasn't measured by your soul anymore. It was measured by your output. How much you produced, how much you earned, how little you rested. Sloth wasn't just a sin, it was treason against your own potential. And if you failed, if you were poor, well, that wasn't the system's fault. That was your fault. You just didn't want it bad enough. You weren't disciplined enough. You weren't worthy enough. So, you worked harder. You worked until your hands bled, until your back bent, until you forgot what your own face looked like without exhaustion carved into it. And then the Industrial Revolution kicks the door down. Suddenly, there are factories, machines, assembly lines that move faster than any human should, and the owners, the men in pressed suits who never touched the coal dust, they looked at those machines and had an idea. What if we could make people work like that too? What if we could strip away everything slow, everything human, everything inefficient, and just extract value? So they did. They put children in mines because small hands fit better in tight spaces. They put women at looms for 16 hours a day because they could pay them less. They put men on floors so loud the sound alone could shatter your skull, and told them it was opportunity. Told them it was the dream. Work hard, earn your freedom. Work harder, earn your dignity. But here's where it gets sick. The workers believed it. They had to, because the alternative was admitting that their suffering meant nothing, that the system was designed not to free them, but to consume them. So they internalized it. They looked at their neighbors who collapsed from exhaustion and thought, well, he must have been weak. They looked at their own children growing crooked spines in the textile mills and thought, at least they're learning discipline. The dream became a cage they defended, a prison they called home. Wait, stop here for a second. I need to ask you something real. Have you ever worked yourself to the point where you forgot why you started? Where the goal disappeared and all that's left is the grind? If that hit you, drop a comment. Just right, I felt this. Because when you do, someone else will realize they're not alone. And that matters. By the 1900s, the dream has a new face. Henry Ford, assembly lines, the $5 workday. People celebrated him like a savior. Finally, decent wages. Finally, a man who cares. Except Ford didn't raise wages out of kindness. He did it because workers kept quitting. The job was so soul-crushing, so repetitive, so dehumanizing that people would rather starve than do it. So Ford paid them just enough to stay, just enough to survive, just enough to buy the very cars they were building, and suddenly the workers weren't just laborers anymore. They were consumers. They were feeding the machine from both ends, making the product, buying the product, spending their whole lives in service to a cycle that kept them exactly where they were. And the genius of it? They thought they were winning, because now they had a Model T in the driveway, a radio in the living room, proof that the dream worked, proof that their sacrifice meant something. But here's what nobody tells you. The dream was never about freedom. It was about efficiency. about turning human beings into perfect economic units. You work, you consume, you reproduce, you die, and your kids do it all over again, only now they call it progress. Then the Great Depression hits and the illusion cracks. Millions unemployed, breadlines stretching for blocks, people who did everything right, who worked themselves to the bone, who believed in the dream with religious fervor, suddenly homeless, starving, broken. And you'd think that would wake people up. You'd think they'd realize the system was rigged. But instead, they blamed themselves. I should have saved more. Should have worked harder. Should have been smarter. The dream was so deep in their DNA by that point that even when it betrayed them, they couldn't see it. They just kept digging, kept hoping, kept believing that if they could just survive this, just make it through, the dream would be waiting on the other side. It wasn't. World War II drags the economy back to life, but only by feeding it corpses. Factories that once made cars now make bombers. Women who were told to stay home are suddenly welders, riveters, engineers. But only until the men come back. Then it's back to the kitchen. Back to the unpaid labor that keeps the whole system running but never gets counted as work. And here's the cruelest joke, even that was sold as freedom. A woman's place is in the home. As if choosing between exploitation in a factory and invisible exploitation in domesticity was ever really a choice. The 1950s, the golden age they call it, suburban homes, white picket fences, the American dream in Technicolor, except it was a lie wrapped in a commercial. Those houses? Built on predatory loans. Those jobs? Paid enough for one income only if you were white, male, and kept your head down. And the cost? Your life. 40 years in the same office, the same factory, the same store. You traded your existence for a pension and a gold watch, and by the time you retired, you were too old, too sick, too used up to enjoy any of it. But hey, you earned it, right? You worked hard. You did everything right. Then the 1980s come, and they don't even pretend anymore. Reaganomics, trickle-down theory. The idea that if you make the rich richer, everyone benefits. Spoiler, they didn't trickle. They hoarded. They built bigger walls, bought politicians, crushed unions, shipped jobs overseas where labor was cheaper and regulations were jokes. And the workers? The ones who still believed in the dream? They just worked harder, took second jobs, third jobs, stopped sleeping, stopped living. Because the dream said if you weren't succeeding, it was your fault. Not the systems. Never the systems. By the 2000s, the dream has a new name, the gig economy. Hustle culture. Rise and grind. Now, you're not even an employee anymore, you're a contractor. No benefits. No security. No safety net. Just you, your laptop, and the constant gnawing fear that if you stop moving, you'll disappear. And the language around it is insidious. Be your own boss. Create your own schedule. Live the life you want. But what they mean is work all the time. Monetize every skill. Turn every hobby into a side hustle. Film yourself doing it. Build a brand. Optimize. Perform. Never stop. Never rest. Because rest is waste. And waste is death. And here's the part that should terrify you. We internalized it. We look at people who work 80-hour weeks and call them inspirational. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. I only slept 4 hours. I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. As if suffering is virtue. As if burning out is proof you cared. We've turned the dream into a cult, and the altar is our own bodies. If stories like this one hit you deeper than they should, if you crave the truth that history tried to bury, then you belong here. Subscribe before the next secret burns its way out. So, where does that leave us? Right here, right now, in a world where the dream isn't even pretending to be about freedom anymore. It's about survival, about staying afloat, about working until you die, because retirement is a fantasy and rest is a privilege you can't afford. The dream that was supposed to set us free became the chain we carry ourselves. And the sickest part? We still defend it, still tell our kids that hard work pays off. That if they just grind a little longer, sacrifice a little more, one day they'll make it. But make it to what? A bigger house you're never in? A nicer car you're too tired to drive? A retirement you might not live to see? The dream doesn't end in freedom. It ends in a hospital bed, wondering where your life went, wondering why it always felt like you were running but never arriving. And maybe, just maybe, realizing too late that the dream was never yours to begin with. It was theirs, the factory owners, the CEOs, the people who profited from your exhaustion and called it opportunity. You think you'd never fall for it. You think you'd see through the lie. But maybe that's exactly what they thought, too, right before they clocked in for another shift.